Alrighty, Questers, welcome back to another quest. This time we are starting our Did You Know series, where we go through the parks and basically ask you, did you know these things a lot? So we're going to go over some fun facts, some history, and all of it.
Pretty much in every park.
Yeah, pretty much in every park. But today we are starting with the Magic Kingdom, so come along with us while I spout random Magic Kingdom fun facts to you, and Ellie holds a camera.
Let's go.
Yep. Alrighty, so one of the things I want to talk about first, I actually filmed this before we headed in and did our intro, is this massive body of water right here called Seven Seas Lagoon. It is the lagoon with which the ferry boat travels through. You can see it loading right now over at the Transportation Ticket Center. And this is actually how you get to the Magic Kingdom. You either take the ferry boat, monorail, or bus. There is no direct parking. And if you're ever wondering why there is no direct parking, it is because of one simple reason: Seven Seas Lagoon. Now, why do we have Seven Seas Lagoon? That's quite simple. One of Walt Disney's biggest complaints when he was in Disneyland, when he was walking around, is that cast members would have to travel from land to land in their costumes because of just where employee parking was and how small the land itself was that they built on. There was one employee parking that had to get to all the functional lands. So that meant Frontierland cast members were walking through Tomorrowland. So you saw cowboys in space. Very disconcerting for Walt, who's very obsessed with the show of it all. It's part of what makes Disney. Disney is that show aspect. It's one of the few things they teach in Disney University when you become a cast member. So when they were building Magic Kingdom, it was a very swamp-ridden land. That's one thing, if you've lived in Florida, you know how muggy, you know how hot, you know how swampy it is. We're all just a bunch of Shreks. So what they decided to do was to build the Magic Kingdom on a second story to alleviate the problem of cast members walking through different lands in different costumes. So the whole of Magic Kingdom was actually built first as a series of tunnels below the entire park, and then what they did was they carved out an entire man-made lagoon, which is Seven Seas Lagoon, took all the land from that, put it on top of the tunnel system, and that's the actual Magic Kingdom part. So anytime you are in Magic Kingdom, recognize that you were on a second story, and that's why some of the rides work the way that they do, which we will talk about later on in the video. So that is one of the wildest things I think about all the time when I'm staying at a Disney resort or even in Magic Kingdom taking the monorail, is the entirety of Seven Seas Lagoon is man-made. It was not a natural body of water that they had when they were doing the Florida project, as they called it. They actually just built it because, well, they wanted to have a series of tunnels underneath Magic Kingdom. And I respect the grind. So, and it does work out a lot. I used to work in Magic Kingdom, so I've been in those tunnels. They are massive, they are confusing. You can get lost in them. Alrighty, so my first little bit of fun facts I'm going to cover are just basic Magic Kingdom. Did you know? First of all, Magic Kingdom opened October 1st, 1971, and is Florida's castle park. If you didn't know, every single Disney resort area in the world has a castle park. Disneyland's is, of course, the OG Disneyland. Ours is Magic Kingdom, and then you pretty much have whatever country it's in, Disneyland before or after it, i.e. Disneyland Paris or Tokyo Disneyland. So, the fun part about a castle park is it always comes with a castle. So, our castle is Cinderella's castle, as indicated by Cinderella's Royal Table being a restaurant in there. And a little did you know fact that most people don't unless they research Disney exclusively, is the fact that there is a suite in there called the Cinderella Royal Suite. You cannot buy it. It is only available for charity auctions and like special guests and stuff like that, sometimes Make-A-Wish things and such. So if you're getting to stay in the castle, that's when you know you've made it to the big leagues. But another lesser known fun fact is about the height and materials used to make the castle. So Cinderella's castle stands anywhere between 189 feet to 199. I get different reports. Most often I say 189 feet. And this has to do with airplanes. So if you don't know, in Florida, if anything is above 200 feet, it has to get a little metal warning light on it, letting people know that, hey, there is a tall building here, so if you're an aircraft flying low to the ground, please do not hit it. It's why certain things like Tower of Terror in Disney's Hollywood Studios is 199 feet, 11 inches. Expedition Everest is somewhere at 197. And Our castle is at 189, but it looks a lot more massive, which comes to a thing that Disney loves to do, which is forced perspective, which basically means the bricks at the bottom are much bigger than the bricks at the top, making you feel like she is a lot taller than she actually is. But the funniest thing about it is, it's not bricks. The castle was actually made using a composite of fiberglass and plaster. It helped allow them to detail it more and get the specific shapes that they need, because when you're at Disney, you're seeing things that don't exist in the real world. So when the Magic Kingdom first opened in 1971, it had several opening day attractions that are still around to this day. A little did you know fact, these are things, let's see if I can name them all without having to look them up. So we have the Walt Disney Railroad Enchanted Tiki Room, Jungle Cruise. Was Country Bear Jamboree an opening day? No. Peter Pan's Flight, It's a Small World, the Carousel, Mad Tea Teacups, and I gotta go to the list for the rest of them. Jumbo the Flying Elephant was also an opening day attraction, other things, because the attraction does not just cover rides, it covers basically even sitting shows and stuff like that. Is Swiss Family Treehouse, Hall of Presidents, how could I forget the Haunted Mansion was an opening day attraction. Tomorrowland Speedway, and I got the rest of it. Go me.
Heck yeah.
First try. So for the next set of fun facts, we're gonna head over behind the castle to Fantasyland, and I am covering the lands in a very specific order. So I will let you guys know why at the end of it. Alrighty, so our first little did you know fact that we're gonna be starting with is a really old one. We are starting with Prince Charming's Regal Carousel, which actually is the oldest attraction, not only in Magic Kingdom, but in the whole of Disney World. And I have to double check my Disneyland facts, but probably beats out most of the attractions there. This carousel behind me actually was built in 1917. It was called the Liberty Carousel and was housed mostly in Detroit, Michigan, till the Disney company bought it, I think 1967, when they were planning on building Magic Kingdom, and they plucked it down here. And it actually was called something else when it opened. They didn't switch it to Prince Charming's Royal Carousel until 2010, when they were kind of updating the Fantasyland section for a more modern equivalent. And another fun fact I love to talk about is actually on the carousel itself. If you look up at the top, we'll get footage of it spinning, but you'll see little screen caps of the Cinderella movie, the original one. And as you go around, it tells you the entire story. So if you are a grandparent or a parent watching the carousel because you don't want to hop on it, you can in fact see the entire story of Cinderella play out on it. Alrighty, so our next little did you know fact we're going to talk about is that people are always watching you in Disney stores. And I do not mean cast members. There are several shops here where either rides or other things go through them that you can see. Even on rides, there's certain restaurants that look out on you. So of course there's Pinocchio Village House where it looks out over It's a Small World. But one of the fun facts that people don't know is about Sir Mickey's. It is themed to Mickey and the Beanstalk, a 1947 Mickey Mouse cartoon themed after Jack and the Beanstalk. So if you go inside, you can actually see a giant trying to cram his way through and see you in the store. It's a little detail if you don't know to look for it. It's just slightly above the entrance right there. But yeah, it's a fun fact. All right, so the next little set of did you know facts that I have are for Mickey's PhilharMagic, a very popular 3D show here in the Magic Kingdom and Fantasyland. And the fun fact has to do with Donald. Donald is actually voiced by two different people. For the time it was made, Donald was voiced by Tony Anzalemo. I am sorry if I mispronounced it or got letters jumbled up. I'm human. And you would think him being the current Donald at the time, he would have recorded all of it. But for this ride, he only recorded 5 lines. The rest of it were all pulled from the Disney archives by a voice actor named Clarence Nash, who actually did Donald Duck originally and voiced him for over 50 years. So they took his footage, used what they can. You see things like Donald saying, "Who threw that? Who threw that?" in the very beginning. That's actually from an old cartoon where he's yelling at Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Other things, but things like him humming Be Our Guest and stuff like that, is from Tony. So it's really cool that Disney managed to blend what the old school and what was then new school together to form a very unique experience for my favorite duck and yours, Donald. So another cool detail, if you notice in the PhilharMagic gift shop, Mickey has sheet music in front of him, old Maestro Mickey. That sheet music is actually the score for the ride. So a little fun little theming detail that helps match what we just witnessed. so our next little did you know fact has to do with the Barnstormer. Not a new attraction by any means, but it did get newly updated. Barnstormer used to be here under a different little section, and then they rethemed this whole area into Storybook Circus, and so they switched it to fit the circus theme. And while Dumbo is over here and is very pristine, very colorful, very bright as the star of the show, which is the whole reason they moved it over here is because it was so popular. And we got things like the flying carpets of Aladdin. The Barnstormer got rethemed to the Great Goofini. But one of the details of the old marquee sign for the Barnstormer was a little yellow tail pennant thing hanging off of it that said simply Barnstormer. And if you go through the queue of the ride, you can see that Goofy does not have a big budget. Goofy is living off his last few dollars. Last little schmeckles, you could say. And so he is using anything he can to make this look pretty. So if you look at a lot of the overhanging covers, you can see that he's just sewing whatever he can into it. There's a little set of heart boxer shorts that you see a lot of. But in two of the yellow ones, two different sections, you can see the old Barnstormer pennant. You can see one that says Barn and then one that says Storm. So look for that next time you ride the Barnstormer. If you're a kid watching this, learn how to read, and that way you can look for it.
Learn how to read.
Alrighty, so my next little did you know fact I want to talk about is actually about pin trading and trivia in of itself. So if you notice, a lot of cast members will have little pin pouches, lanyards, lapels, little different things with pins and pin boards. And if you see leaders a lot in the park, they have pins as well. And they actually will have hidden ones. A lot of times if you ask them, they will ask you Disney trivia. So if you're ever wanting to learn Disney trivia or test your knowledge, ask a cast member to trade some harder to find pins. And so you'll get things like how many Disney princesses still have their parents, which classic Disney movie starts at Christmas and ends at Christmas, or even things about the parks. I once got asked what ride used to house Princess Fairy Tale Hall, a little princess meet and greet area over in normal Fantasyland, not New Fantasyland. The answer is Snow White's Scary Adventures. There's your little helper with it. But the other thing is this area right behind me, Storybook Circus, has a lot of pin boards in it. There's one out front and there's two inside the store. So if you're ever wanting to pin trade, you can come here and find a lot of boards very quickly. Alrighty, so for our next little bit of New Fantasyland, did you know we just left Storybook Circus? We are now in the Ariel section. I don't know, Fantasyland's huge. There's a lot going on to it, which is one of the fun things. But the land that we're actually standing on is Ariel's Grotto. Behind me, you can see the DVC building, the Vacation Club stuff. But what this used to be was a 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea ride when Magic Kingdom first opened, and it ran for many, many years till it was eventually shut down and eventually replaced with Ariel's Grotto, Under the Sea Voyage of the Little Mermaid. And if you go even further behind here, Seven Dwarfs Mine Train. So there's a lot of land that was covered. It was a undersea ride, so you had to have water for it. And Disney, being Disney, left a little bit of fun knots for them. The first one right there, the DVC building is actually called H. Goff Cartography. So there's a couple fun things you can see. They have a map of all the Disney parks at the time of creation and stuff in there. But the H. Goff is specifically for Harper Goff, who was the production designer for 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea and designed the Nautilus ships for the movie, which was the ride vehicles for the ride itself. There'll be more on those ride vehicles in a moment. But above the building, you can see the weather vane above it has a squid, which if you've ever read the book, you know that holds a very significance for it. So it's yet another homage to the ride itself. The next little fun fact I want to talk about is right outside Bonjour Village Gifts in the Beauty and the Beast section of New Fantasyland. And basically it's just a gift shop right outside Gaston's Tavern. So there's nothing fancy about it, but if you do look in the windows, you can see a couple friends hiding. There's Cogsworth chipping away, and then right by that little window pane is Chip with his little broken cut and all. The other one that you can see in the windows is the man himself, Lumiere. And if you're wondering, why does Lumiere have a tag on him? It's because he's actually a little display piece you can buy in the store. So the Cogsworth, the Chip, and the Lumiere are all toys for children that you can buy in the store, or if you want your own little versions of them in your house, you can buy them inside. Alrighty, so rounding out our Did You Knows for Fantasyland, we are stopping at the greatest restrooms in all of Disney, the Tangled restrooms, because there's a couple little fun facts about this. Number one, before these were restrooms, this was a stop for the Disney sky buckets, much like if you've ever seen Disneyland, old footage of it. They had little sky buckets that would take you through things like the Matterhorn and such like that. They have stopped it here, but when they opened Disney World in 1971, they also had them here. There was a stop in Tomorrowland and a stop here, and that's what this used to be. They got rid of the sky bucket, so they turned this into the Tangled restrooms. And for the main did you know fact for this part, we are going to find Pascal because he is hiding among some of the greenery and shrubbery here. As a nice, is there 7? My Tangled expert Ellie is telling me there's 7. We in fact did get it wrong. There are not 7, there are 10 Pascals hiding around Fantasyland's restrooms. Well, just the Rapunzel restroom, but you get what I mean. I don't know if we're gonna find all of them. We are gonna find some to show you on camera. So the next fact I want to talk to you about is about bells. The Liberty Bell, to be exact. So we have moved to Liberty Square, and as you know, Liberty Square is themed around colonial America. Walt was a huge fan of America and its history. It's why for the 1964 World's Fair, he did great moments with Mr. Lincoln, his favorite president. So when they built Disney World, instead of building a New Orleans Square, they did a Liberty Square, which has a replica of the Liberty Bell. I know what you're thinking. There's a lot of Liberty Bells out there, a lot of replicas, but there's only a true one. And you were right, there's only one true Liberty Bell. But this one is unique because it was actually made for Disney World with the same mold as the actual Liberty Bell. It says so right here on this plaque. My next little did you know fact is about plants. Specifically this tree, which gave Liberty Tree Tavern its name. That is not a lie. But this tree right here is actually older than most of your grandparents. It was around when the Florida Project was underway, and it actually was already 100 years old by that point in the late 60s. And the Imagineers saw this opportunity and realized it would be a great tree for Liberty Square. There's just one 38-ton problem about this tree. It was not in the right space. So what they had to do over a period of So what they had to do was take this 38-ton tree and move it 8 miles. And I know what you're thinking. You can just pick it up with a crane, move it over. Well, if they wanted to keep the tree intact and still have it be a great big beautiful tree, they had to do it slowly. So it took them 7 months to move the tree. That's a long time. And this tree has actually become quite famous in Disney history. It is actually the symbol of the Disney horticulture department, which handles all the greenery around the Disney parks. It is actually so important to Disney World that they have 2 trees on standby if anything should happen to this tree. I also forgot to mention, when they were moving it, they had to shove a giant metal rod inside to keep it intact. Yeah, another fun fact about this tree, more specific to the Liberty Square function of it, is that there are 13 lanterns hanging above it. Now, I'm sure a bunch of you dads just muttered under your breath, it's for the 13 colonies, and you are correct. It is for the 13 original colonies of America, which are mostly represented here. It's why you see that Columbia Harbor House is based off of a Boston architecture versus the Haunted Mansion is based off of Upper New York State architecture, and it's hidden all around Liberty Square. So another little did you know fun fact for Liberty Square is that there are no restrooms. So there, think about it. Yeah, that's right. There are no restrooms. There is one in Liberty Tree Tavern, but as far as anything else goes, that's not a sit-down restaurant. There are no restaurants in Liberty Square. They can get away with this because of how small it is. I mean, the Tangled restrooms are right outside there, but inside the land, there are no public restrooms. This is to do with the fact that we are in colonial America. They did not have indoor plumbing. So what did they do instead of indoor plumbing, you may ask? It's kind of disgusting, but they would take their waste and they basically would throw it in the streets. You see it a lot as jokes in cartoons, probably in like Family Guy and stuff like that, but it is represented here in a very disgusting fun fact. If you look at the ground beneath you in Liberty Square, a lot of it's red pavement, except for these brown little river trails, which the brown little river trails are meant to represent human waste. I have been cursed with that knowledge, and now so are you. Alrighty, now for our Did You Know Adventureland section. Now we have a lot for Adventureland, and I want to start with Pirates of the Caribbean, because there's actually a ton of cool stuff about Pirates of the Caribbean, especially in Magic Kingdom. Now, with Magic Kingdom being a castle park, it is almost an exact replica of Disneyland, more so when it opened than here, but one notable exception was Pirates of the Caribbean. It had opened in Disneyland by the time, being one of the last projects that Walt himself worked on before he passed away, and they didn't have it in Florida. And one of the main reasons was because Florida is close to the coast, especially where pirates roamed, so they didn't want to have a pirates attraction where there actually were pirates. They didn't figure people would be interested. Well, Disney had done a lot of airing on ABC, The Wonderful World of Disney, and stuff like that, so the public knew about Pirates of the Caribbean, and so they wanted it. They were craving it. But there was one small problem. Pirates of the Caribbean is massive. It was one of the biggest show buildings at the time, and it's still a massive show building. So, where they built it in New Orleans Square in Disneyland, they couldn't do here in Liberty Square. There just wasn't enough space to hide the massive show building that Pirates required. So they built it in Adventureland instead, since they had enough room on the periphery to get it built, which led to one other major problem, which is the Magic Kingdom Railroad crosses right through here, and it would cut through pirates. And so they needed to take us backstage. Well, Disney World doesn't have a backstage, not in Magic Kingdom at least. They have a downstage in the tunnel system, but how are you going to get guests into the tunnels without ruining the show aspect of it all? Well, you just drop them down a waterfall, which is why in our Pirates of the Caribbean, we drop down a waterfall, and as we're leaving, we have to go up the moving walkway escalator up to the gift shop, because when we drop down into the tunnels, which is where the massive show building actually is, and then we come back up and pop out outside. So that's your first little fun fact section of Pirates. So now I want to talk about all the many iterations of the Pirates of the Caribbean ride, because if you've been coming to Disney World for its 50+ year history, or just Disney theme parks in general for the 70+ year history, you know that Pirates of the Caribbean has gone through many different changes. Most notably being when the movie came out, because yes, the ride did come before the movie, they added in a whole bunch of movie nods. That's why you see Jack Sparrow hidden throughout the ride, all in different sections, and why when you cross into the first section after the drop, the pirate's name is Barbossa. That was actually added in after the movies had come out. But that's not the only time that Pirates has changed. A couple little changes had been made here and there, most notably during the auction scene, and then the room right after when you see all of the pirates getting chased by the women. In the original versions of those rides, these stories weren't as fun. See, in the original auction scene, they weren't auctioning off chickens or rum, they were actually auctioning off people. Red the pirate used to be the main attraction of the auction, the prized possession, because she was the prettiest and had the most red hair, and the little circles of pirates going around used to be the pirates chasing the women, in a not so fun depiction of how those things actually went. So, in order to make Disney parks more family friendly, they switched up those scenes throughout the years and just made them what we know them today, as the women getting chased by pirates and Red being a pirate herself, and instead we're auctioning off some chickens that pirates just don't care about. Another couple fun Easter eggs to keep an eye out for is in the scene where they are drowning Carlos in the well. Why didn't we change that? Changed everything else, but we're still drowning this dude. There are two pirates right next to him. If you notice, one has a hook hand, a nice little beard, and is wearing a red coat, and the one next to him is wearing a blue and white striped shirt and has a red hat. That is a nod to Peter Pan and the pirates featured in that, Captain Hook and his first mate Smee. So keep an eye on him next time you see him. And the last thing I want to talk about is a little bit of Disney theme parks reuse and recycling. Disney reuses a lot of props throughout rides, but they also, there's something behind me. Oh, it's Jack. That's cool. The last little fun Pirates of the Caribbean fun fact I want to talk about is a little bit of reuse and Disney theme parks recycling. Now, they reuse a lot of props inside of the theme parks. You notice things like the little droids checking your baggage in Star Tours are actually reused chickens from Splash Mountain. The whole of Splash Mountain's animatronics were actually reused from an America Sings production in Disney World, and so on and so forth, just things getting reused. Well, a most notable fun fact is the chair that Jack is sitting in at the end of the ride is actually reused from the 2003 Haunted Mansion movie. When Master Gracie lets Eddie Murphy and his family into the house for the first time, they sit down at a nice dining room table with, if you notice it, chairs that look exactly like the Captain Jack one. They made a few different changes to make it look like it's in the same time period and matching the kind of Latin American culture themes of the time. But yeah, it's the same chair from the movies. And this is also true of the one in Disneyland. It's another one of those chairs. We don't know if it's actually the one Eddie Murphy sat in, but it's still cool to theorize about it. All right, my next Did You Know Adventureland fun fact has a lot to do with more Disney theme parks reuse and recycling. And in fact, I have another one for reuse and recycling here at Adventureland too. But first, we're going to talk about these camels behind me for the magic carpets of Aladdin. Now, of course, Aladdin had not come out when Disney World first opened, and it didn't even come out until much later. But these camels predate the magic carpets of Aladdin because of Hollywood Studios. In Hollywood Studios, right around the time Aladdin came out, and a little bit of cross promotion, they had an Aladdin parade that had these two guys in it, still spitting at guests, still making kids giggle, even all the way back in the day. And then when they eventually shut down that parade, they put them in front of a backlot restaurant that Hollywood Studios used to have. But when they put in the magic carpets of Aladdin, they decided to move them in here and have them spit at children to this day. Now it is time to talk about the eighth wonder of the world, the backside of water, found on the Jungle Cruise. So one of the really cool things about the Jungle Cruise that I like to mention as my first little fun fact is it was actually Walt's dream when he was building the one in Disneyland to do a real safari based off of what he experienced in South America. But just at the time, they realized they couldn't really feasibly do it. They had to go with animatronics, but they still wanted to feature it in some sort of way, which is why we have the Jungle Cruise in the way we know it. The reason I mention this is because if you look at the costumes that Jungle Cruise skippers wear and the safari drivers for Kilimanjaro Safaris, they're very similar, and a little bit of a nod to the fact that Kilimanjaro Safaris is what Jungle Cruise was always supposed to be. That's a boring fun fact. For a more fun fact, we're going to talk about that Disney reuse and recycling that I mentioned earlier at the Magic Carpets of Aladdin. There is a half a plane hidden in this ride. It's not really hidden. Your skipper will point it out, make jokes about how they got here half off, they crash landed and now they have a job, any sort of thing. Well, the history of that plane is actually more extensive than you might realize. You see, planes do not come in halves, they come in wholes. So if you have the back half here, where is the first half? Well, the answer to that was the Great Movie Ride that opened with MGM Studios, now we know as Hollywood Studios. So it was featured in the Casablanca scene, and they bought the plane, realized they couldn't fit it in the space they needed, so they just cut the plane in half, featured it on the ride, and then the back half ended up on the now extinct backlot tour at Hollywood Studios, and eventually during some refurbishment somewhere down the line, they decided to stick it in Jungle Cruise. I think it's funny that they used the front half and couldn't find any use for the back half. Now the back half is the only one in use right now because the front half is in a ride that closed down. I said half a lot. Alrighty, so after leaving Adventureland, I brought us to Main Street before heading to Tomorrowland because I wanted to cover, A, it's part of the order, don't forget the order, and B, I wanted to cover a couple things down here before fireworks start and it gets crazy crowded. First is above the Crystal Arts building. Now, Main Street is littered with windows, just as many in here as there are in Disneyland, representing old cast members and people influential to Disney. But there's a fun fact about this window specifically that rests above Crystal Arts? Crystal Arts. I was wanting to say Crystal Palace. That's a different restaurant. But if you look above it, it lists 6 companies, which are the 6 shell companies that Walt Disney used when he was buying land in Florida. Not many people know this, but when Walt was buying land for what would later become Magic Kingdom, he was calling it the Florida Project. And he knew if he came down there wanting to buy swampland, everybody would price gouge him and charge him lots of money. And Walt Disney, above all else, first was a businessman. I think we forget that a lot. So he made 6 shell companies with which to buy up land and then later diverse them all into the main Walt Disney Company. But they are all referenced right here above the building, including Reedy Creek, which eventually became the name of the town that Disney World sits in, the Reedy Creek Improvement District. See, Walt Disney World is so big and they wanted total control of it, that they made their own little Reedy Creek Improvement District, which is why, if you look, Disney has its own security and its own firefighting offices all on property. We're gonna have a little fun with flags moment.
Okay, Sheldon.
All you Big Bang Theory people just chuckled to yourself. But specifically, I want to talk about this flagpole behind me. If you will notice, right now, it has no flag versus the one behind it at the railroad station does still have a flag up. So this is due to, well, one very simple fact. The United States has a lot of laws regarding its flags. They have to be flown at half-mast on certain days, like a death of a president or 9/11. It has to be put up and taken down at the end of each and every day. Well, Disney World, specifically Magic Kingdom, has a lot of American flags in it. I mean, Main Street USA and Liberty Square are all based around the United States. So every building on Main Street has a flag. Well, the thing about this is these flags on Main Street are not all actual United States flags. Even in Liberty Square, they're not all current United States flags. A lot of them will have either mismatched stripes or an incorrect amount of stars, or even if you look in Liberty Square, it has 13 stars to represent the original flag for America, designating the 13 colonies. This one right here, though, is the only real American flag in the entire park, which is why it gets taken down every day, and they have a special ceremony for it where they find a veteran in the park and they dedicate it to them when they take the flag down for the day. So to bring you to my last little Main Street fun fact, we are going to talk about this restaurant behind me, Tony's Town Square Restaurant. And if you do not know Tony, he is the chef owner from Lady and the Tramp, which is what this restaurant is themed after. His Italian restaurant where they did the cute little smoochie with the spagoot in the middle of it. I'm sorry if I say things weird. You guys have no idea how many weird things Ellie says. Spagoot. What's another one you say all the time? Chippies. Can't say chips normal ever again. That's love, folks. And speaking of love and ladies and tramps, I mean the movie, not Lady and the Tramp, the dog. Siwioil. She's saying random words behind me. But anyways, in the cement out right side here, in the stroller parking area, you'll actually notice 4 little dog prints. 2 are supposed to be ladies, 2 are supposed to be tramps, and they are covered in a heart with an arrow up through them, letting you know that they did in fact eat here, and a nice little bit of theming and Easter egging for the restaurant. Alrighty, so the first little did you know fact I want to talk about for Tomorrowland actually features our restaurant, Cosmic Rays Starlight Cafe. And it has to do with a secret about Sunny Eclipse. So Sunny Eclipse did not originate with the restaurant. The restaurant was actually called Tomorrowland Terrace when it first opened in 1971. And around the mid-90s, it switched to being Cosmic Rays Starlight Cafe, where we got our main man, Sunny. And most people don't know this, but the stage he's on actually lifts up. There's whole hydraulics underneath it, because when this was Tomorrowland Terrace, they had live bands in here. They were just local ones or like cover bands or stuff like that. Occasionally they do like the Disney bands where Mickey and Minnie and all of them would dance on stage, but that stage would lift out of the ground and you would see it. And the best part about this fun fact is you can actually still see this effect happen at very random times throughout the year. Most notably being very merry and not so scary after hours events. You see, whenever they switch from daytime to nighttime operations for those after hours, they raise the stage, because one of the big things about those events is there are usually dance parties going on in Starlight Cafe. So if you get here around Magic Kingdom's closing time before open, you might get to see that stage lift up and Sunny disappear into the ceiling. Alrighty, so for another Did You Know Tomorrowland fun fact, we're actually gonna head inside Space Mountain right behind us. So Space Mountain is another not opening day attraction in the Magic Kingdom, and it is referenced in kind of the big board outside. So if you look inside, it says we're at Starport 75, which is a reference to 1975, the year that Space Mountain opened here in Disney World. If you see on the board right when you walk inside, the big gigantic board that says Station 75, you will also see a list of active Earth stations, which are references to all the other Space Mountains. So you have things like TL Space Station 77, reference to Disneyland's Tomorrowland Space Mountain. You see things like Discovery Landing Station in Paris, of course Disneyland Paris is, Achaidh Base, Tokyo, which fun fact about Tokyo Space Mountain is it actually has recently been torn down. It of course will be rebuilt into a much more thrilling Space Mountain, which might happen to ours. That's not confirmed. That's just a theory I have, that's how we're gonna start updating Space Mountain, because a lot of people say it gives them back adjustments. And then lastly is the HK Spaceport e-ticket. which is a reference to Hong Kong Disney World Space Mountain, Hong Kong Disneyland, Space Mountain. The only one without a Space Mountain is Shanghai Disneyland. They ended up opting to go with Tron, which is really funny because we also have Tron here. So we got the best of both worlds. Go Florida. I did want to talk about the reason why I went through the lands as I did. So everybody knows that Main Street is built in a hub and spokes pattern. Almost everything leads back into the center and it goes back out. It was meant to help families find the directions, and Walt researched it and found out it is the best organizational method for building a theme park. So it's why several parks are built like that. All the castle parks are built in that hub and spokes pattern. And another Disney park, Animal Kingdom, is also built in that hub and spokes pattern, where everything leads back into everything else. But the reason for this is there's actually a specific way where you can go through the Magic Kingdom and you're taking a trip through time. And that is the way we went through today. So if you think about it, you start in Fantasyland, you start in knights and princesses and castles and dragons and all that stuff, myths and legends, and then you go through and you hit Liberty Square. You start in the New World, seeing that, turn of the century, American Revolution. You head further into the Frontierland. You can see when we moved out west into cowboy times and stuff like that. Coming back through to Adventureland, you see a lot of the things that, you know, started happening around the early 20th century in the 1920s, you know, excursions and stuff like that with the Jungle Cruise. And then you come back through Main Street USA and you take a trip through Walt's childhood and you see the, what would it be, 40s, 50s, and 60s, all that stuff. And then you head into Tomorrowland, which is all about tomorrow. Now, it's just a simple fan theory, not really anything that anybody's confirmed. There's a couple areas where it breaks down, in my opinion, but I thought it'd be cool to show it to y'all and have you noodle on it. But yeah, this has been our Did You Know Day about the Magic Kingdom. Alrighty guys, that's gonna bring us to a close on our Did You Know Day for Magic Kingdom. I hope you enjoyed listening to me for however long this video is. I'm so sorry. But I hope you guys at least learned something new. If not, you can yell at me in the comments about how I have nothing original. And if you guys have a fun fact you would like to mention about Disney World or Disney parks in general, please leave it in the comments and it might show up in a future Did You Know video. We have 3 other parks, plus I gotta come back. I'm learning more all the time.
Yes.
So, but until then guys, make sure to leave a like and subscribe. Really helps push engagement. Even commenting helps do that too. We have hit 1,700 subscribers and are counting. Our next goal is going to be 5,000. We have something planned we will be revealing soon for when we hit 5,000. But also make sure to follow us on our socials. We are pretty much every social media you can think of at Parkquesters, posting daily.
Trying to.
Yeah, pushing content that ways. But until then guys, I've been Ellie. Nope, I've been Jacob.
I've been Ellie.
And we'll see you on our next quest. Bye.